Imagine a courtroom where the tension is so high that a knife might cut it, followed by a terrible secret that upends your entire understanding of loyalty and treachery. Yes, when his ally Chrissy disclosed a fact so explosive that it seemed like a bomb exploded just in front of him. Camron, who has always been the king of cool, was taken by surprise in the most startling way imaginable. Friendships, jobs, and probably even lives could be destroyed by this kind of secret. The twist is that Jim Jones, who is incarcerated, is suffering unanticipated consequences as a result of this secret. Because of Chrissy's courtroom bombshell, it's difficult. It's a whole nightmare. But why is there a connection? Right. This is a life or death narrative that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about loyalty, treachery, and the price of preserving secrets. It's not just a courtroom drama. You won't want to miss the truth, I promise, since things will swiftly become ugly. The courtroom served as a stage, but the drama unfolding inside was on par with a reality program. The audience's quiet murmurs became loud gasps as the judge struck the gavel, and everyone's focus rightfully so shifted to Camron. He was Camron Lampin, a Harlem icon, one of the creators of Dipset, and the definition of cool. So he wasn't just another defendant or witness in a court case. But today, it looked like someone else was handling the cards in fact, it looked like Chrissy Lampin was doing it. The tension was palpable, and in place of Camron's usual bluster, there was an odd vulnerability that is unusual in the ego-driven hip-hop industry. When Chrissy dropped a bombshell that rocked the room to its core, his eyes widened. Her remarks had the potential to ruin everything, since they were not just explosive, but also radioactive. This wasn't merely judicial drama along their road. It was the kind of secret that could ruin friendships, careers, and the lives of some of the most well-known hip-hop artists. However, what did Chrissy say specifically? It wasn't your normal confession in court, as you undoubtedly suspected, but it was personal. It was the kind of treachery that nobody anticipated. Before Chrissy's disclosure, everyone was aware that there were some issues in Camron and Jim Jones' relationship, but no one had any idea how serious they were. Let's go back a bit. The glamour of the music had caused Camron and Jim Jones' closest friends, business associates, and fellow Dipset warriors to weather their fair share of storms. These two were more than just companions. They were brothers in the fight against their own inner demons. But below the parties, the extravagant lifestyle, and the notoriety, there was a lingering strain that even the general public was blind to, as their relationship slowly soured over time. The two men had always been total opposites in many respects. Jim Jones, with his more restrained but no less harsh exterior, and Camron, with his brash attitude and unfiltered opinions. There were rumors that they had different visions, values, and goals. In that courtroom, Chrissy Lampin, who had stood by Jim through thick and thin for years, now turned the tables on everyone, including Camron, as Chrissy disclosed something startling that upended the basis of Camron and Jim Jones' friendship. The atmosphere in the room became frosty. Not only was it a private issue between the two men, but it also had the potential to impact their entire professional paths. Like daggers, Chrissy's words were directed straight at the core of their fraternity. The suddenness of it all took Camron by surprise, and he had no idea what had hit him. What was the secret behind Chrissy's admission, even though the details were damning? Was there something concerning Camron's betrayal of Jim's past? No, it was more nuanced than that. It was a reality that would reveal the core of these men's trust. Even Camron's characteristic sardonic humor and self-assurance were insufficient to conceal the shock he was experiencing at the time due to the depth of the betrayal. Someone he believed he knew well had taken him by surprise. How could they divulge something so private? Chrissy was not going to back down. Whether you're on the streets or in the spotlight, trust is what keeps everything together in this game. And when it's shattered, the results may be deadly. Jim and Camron had worked together to build their business. But Chrissy's disclosure exposed all that had been lurking beneath the surface. and it wasn't a good picture. I'll eventually reveal the secret that could have led to all of this chaos. But first, let's discuss the ramifications, because once Chrissy's secret went south, that had an impact on not just Camron and Jim, but the entire hip-hop community. At the time of the bombshell, Jim Jones was already incarcerated. His situation there had previously been chaotic. He was a well-known person, especially in the hip-hop culture, so everyone knew who he was. While other inmates would attempt to conceal their identities, Jim was unable to do so. His every action was keenly observed. But his struggles in prison went far beyond simply enduring the physical ordeal. The psychological toll was even more severe. His time in prison had become a living hell following this revelation, on top of the difficulty of being separated from his family, his business, and his existence as a hip-hop mogul. Even though Jim Jones was already in a bad position, his prison life has only gotten worse. Reputation and trust were more important than mere physical threats these days. And Jim could see everything he had worked so hard to establish crumbling before his very eyes. Camron was in trouble now, but this time it was about losing face rather than being imprisoned. After years of building a solid reputation as one of hip-hop's most important figures, Camron's reputation was suddenly in jeopardy. How could he reveal his face once more? How was he able to walk? Fans, media outlets, and even other hip-hop artists had strong opinions on Chrissy's secret, which caused a wild public reaction. Some were quick to pick sides, cheering Camron on for his surprise and incredulity, while others felt more pity for Jim, who was now battling for both his freedom and his honor. They couldn't stop questioning themselves. What does this mean for Dipet's future? Why now? And how could Chrissy have done this? What would happen, however, was the actual question that everyone was interested in. Then, fans couldn't stop talking about Chrissy's bombshell announcement on social media. And the fallout sent shockwaves across the hip-hop industry from coast to coast. Under all the tweets and vehement opinions, Camron vs. Jim Jones trended for days, with fans arguing over who was right and who was wrong. However, one mystery remained. What was Chrissy's real motivation? Was it an attention-seeking wail or something darker? With more regular leaks as the days passed, the scandal only got worse. Began to surface. A purported source revealed that Chrissy had been hiding this information for months of growing animosity. Months of silent rage, and one explosive courtroom incident that nobody anticipated. These unnamed sources claim that Chrissy had had enough of Camron and Jim Jones's constant conflict and was determined not to watch her guy get further involved in the situation. But what had this secret been? There were still rumors, but nothing concrete had come to light. Some conjectured that it had to do with money. Perhaps some financial treachery on Jim's side that Camron was aware of but chose to remain silent about, while others thought it had to do with it involved betrayal on a whole other level, not just devotion. According to Chrissy, Camron knew about some of the illicit activities Jim was engaged in, but he chose to ignore them. In hip-hop's cutthroat industry, loyalty is highly prized. Until she told her truth, no one could be certain that Camron had crossed a boundary with Jim, and when she did, it was much worse than anybody could have predicted. Not only had Camron been keeping some serious secrets regarding Jim's background, quote, Chrissy disclosed, but the consequences of those secrets were worse than anything Jim had gone through while incarcerated. All for the sake of fame and fortune. But things get worse because Camron had been playing both sides, according to Chrissy. Even though he was Jim's partner, he was also befriending others who wanted Jim to fail. Camron had used Jim's legal troubles as a launching pad for his career, so he wasn't exactly in a rush to provide him with financial or emotional support while he was incarcerated. Jim's legacy could be irreparably damaged by Camron's reported behind-the-scenes agreements with rival artists and record labels. Fans of hip-hop were enamored. The subject suddenly shifted from which side you were on or which side of the feud was more legitimate or better to trust and loyalty. Two attributes that were essential in the hip-hop space. Those values had been annihilated if the stories about Camron were true. Leaked records showed that Camron had allegedly secured lucrative endorsement deals with big brands while Jim was incarcerated. But the most incriminating evidence of Camron's claimed involvement in financial transactions was considerably murkier than anybody had expected. Asterisk. The rights to some of Jim's most valuable assets, including his name, image, and likeness, were purportedly signed away in some of these agreements. Yes, Camron is accused of using Jim's name to raise his prestige while he was battling for his life in prison. These documents reveal that certain influential executives were keen to have Jim gone so they could sign agreements that they knew would never have been made if Jim had remained free. By promising him higher rewards and other advantages, they were successful in getting Camron to sign these contracts. At first, this was merely internet speculation and gossip, but as more documents were exposed, the scenario became increasingly clear. When the receipts arrived, they were unsightly. Supporters started to wonder if Camron was truly the cool, easygoing rapper they adored, the buddy they thought he was, or just another entrepreneur looking to make money. But most importantly, what would Jim think of all this when he found out? Reactions from the public were mixed. Some fans backed Camron, arguing that you had to prioritize your own interests in the harsh world of hip-hop. Angry with him, claiming that he was nothing more than a snake if the charges were accurate. In any event, it was clear that the two hip-hop icons were at odds. It wasn't just a disagreement. It was the kind of betrayal that could bring down a whole empire. As this was going on, legal professionals started to comment. Could Jim bring a lawsuit against Camron for these purported business transactions? Could Camron be held responsible for what appeared to be a significant betrayal of confidence? Although the answer was unclear, it was known that both men may suffer greatly as a result of this incident. Rumors that a bigger conspiracy was at work started to circulate behind the scenes. It was clear that the consequences of Chrissy's court secret would not be going away anytime soon as the dust settled from the shocking disclosures. As the problem worsened daily, the industry, media, and fans started to pay attention. Was Chrissy's behavior a part of a bigger plan to pressure Jim into giving up Camron's control over their joint ventures? Or did she just decide it was time to reveal the truth at all costs because she had had enough of living in the shadow of the men she loved? All of the insiders had their thoughts, but the most crucial one was how Jim Jones would respond to the situation. As the clock approached the impending clash, the entire world waited anxiously. Some thought Jim would bash Camron on social media, but his silence said more than words could. Fans weren't amenable to Jim's team's carefully phrased remark that alluded to an impending official reaction, but they chose not to add to the hysteria. They wanted Jim Jones to do something about the person who had flipped his life upside down and betrayed him for money and fame. The financial and legal action, rumors, but lawsuits and possible criminal charges only grew more intense. Legal experts began to speculate that the case might wind up in court, with one expert even stating this could get uglier than anything we've seen in hip-hop history. Betrayal like this doesn't just fade away. It leaves scars, and Jim's going to need more than just a lawyer to fix this. Would Jim be able to sue for defamation? Could he file a complaint for the supposed betrayal? Or was this simply another example of how the hip-hop industry's corporate sector might take advantage of strained friendships while shattering hearts? Started to divide into two groups, each fiercely protecting their idol. The back and forth was fierce, with Camron being branded a traitor and a rapacious opportunist by one group and Jim being called a victim of the game by the other. Then, suspicions began to circulate that high-level corporate interests with a financial stake in Dipset's brand might have been involved, and things took a darker turn. Was it a straightforward betrayal between pals, or was there a darker scheme going on? Was Chrissy's admission in court only the beginning of a far bigger game of backstabbing and manipulation behind the scenes? Jim and Camron started to feel pressured by money to make certain choices. Rumor had it that Jim's team was receiving advice on how to deal with the consequences from some enigmatic individuals who had extensive connections in the entertainment business. These individuals warned Jim that he would lose everything unless he made amends with Camron. A new, darker chapter in the story began to emerge as the pressure mounted. News of an urgent meeting between their legal teams quickly followed rumors of possible reconciliation negotiations between Jim and Camron. Many others speculated as to what they might be discussing. Supporters who had been rooting for Jim to confront Camron began to feel duped by the same person they had been rooting for. Camron was mostly silent, at least in public, and his typical bravado was absent. One commenter asked, why is he playing nice with the person who stabbed him in the back? Others asked, is Jim really the same street-hardened rapper who once stood tall and proud in the face of adversity? Or has he become just another cog in the machine controlled by people with more power than he could comprehend? To be discovered, and decided not to take advantage of the media craze, but instead to maintain a low social media presence. But according to whispers circulating within his inner circle, Camron was preparing a resurgence, both as an artist and as the kingmaker of the whole New York rap scene. Some even implied that labels eager to capitalize on the scandal had made him attractive offers. As soon as the crisis began, the plot became more complex. And Chrissy made an unprecedented decision by disclosing even more information in a widely reported interview, saying that Camron's treachery when the media grabbed on every word Chrissy said as she made these new, shocking claims public. The thought that two of the most recognizable hip-hop stars had turned against one another was simply too compelling to resist. One headline cried out, "Is this the end of Dipset?" Another questioned, "Has Camron sold out his brother for power?" She asserted that, in addition to certain dubious business practices, Camron had also disclosed more sinister personal information to other well-known industry players who would do whatever it took to safeguard their interests, even if it meant severing long-standing friendships. The repercussions were rapid, and the world watched in wonder. As Camron's sales started to drop, there were a lot of speculations on the internet that his trading career was coming to an end. In the meantime, Jim Jones began to become more well-known, and his streams grew as supporters flocked to him in the hopes that he would somehow get over this controversy. But many people knew in their hearts that Jim would always be plagued by the shadow of this treachery, regardless of how successful he became. On the other hand, Chrissy rose to fame on her own. Her judicial disclosure altered the course of events. Rather than merely igniting a media frenzy, one thing was clear: Chrissy was at the heart of it all. Some viewed her as a hero who had defended her boyfriend, while others regarded her as a crafty manipulator who was an expert at the game. She had set off a series of events that left Jim Jones and Camron in shock. And by the time it was all over, the hip-hop landscape had changed forever. One of the most dramatic and divisive tales the industry has ever seen would be the one involving Camron and Jim Jones. That one courtroom was the culmination of the betrayal, the drama, the lies, and the betrayal, and now no one would ever be the same. Did Camron deceive Jim for the large sum of money, people? Or is the story not as complete as we think? Only time will reveal what truly transpired behind closed doors, and the reality might be more sinister than we could have ever guessed. It's not too far from this story. Click like if you would like to be the first to know about further developments in this exciting story. Tell us whether you support Jim or Camron in the comments section below. If you're startled by what you just heard, please subscribe to the channel if you think Chrissy is the real puppet master behind all of this. This is only the start. We will be dissecting each new event as it occurs. Keep an eye out because the truth always finds a way to come to light. And you'll want to be right here to witness all of the shocking disclosures that are headed your way. Trust me, this isn't the last controversy to come out of this complicated scenario. Twist and turn, and turn.